Hey guys, today's video is on things you should do before you try and slide. This isn't sort of a necessary step or something you must do, but it's going to help you loads when it's time for you to actually slide and all that good stuff. At this point, you should be comfortable on your board, you should be comfortable cruising, curving and foot braking. If you're not comfortable with these things, go back, learn them and get comfortable with them, especially foot braking and curving. Foot braking is going to be essential to learning to slide, and curving is really going to be the foundations for making your board break traction and break into the slide. If you're not comfortable on board as well, you're going to have a lot of trouble when it comes trying to slide. So yeah, go back, learn these things. And at this point, in terms of gear, you're going to need a helmet and slide gloves at minimum. Knee, elbow and hip pads will be useful as well. At this point, most boards are going to be okay. If you have like a really short board though, like a mini cruiser, like a dinghy or a penny board, you're going to have some trouble. But if you do have a bigger long board, you're going to be okay. Finally, this video will actually be more useful for reference as you're trying to slide as well. You know, you're going to have to come back and try some of the things mentioned here over time, and this value will really be apparent when you're in the mix of it, when you're trying things, and you'll be able to come back and fine-tune them, and some of the things I'm describing here will make more sense. But yeah, so do come back and look at it when you do go off to learn to slide. So the first thing you should do before you try to slide is get the foot positioning for sliding and turning whilst crouch correct. So for Heelside or Toeside turns, you're likely going to need different foot positioning depending on your flexibility and what you're comfortable with. In this next step, I'll be highlighting some examples for you, but you basically need to go back and figure out what's comfortable for you in reference to what I'm showing you. So we'll be doing these stationary, so let's start off with the Heelside foot positions. Okay, in this step, we're just looking at the foot position stationary. These are what the foot positions are going to be like when you crouch down. Now we're just going to be doing them standing up just to sort of get a right feel for them, then apply them when we crouch down and try bring it all together. So for Heelside foot positions, you're going to want to have your feet about shoulder width apart. They can be wider. I don't recommend them being narrower unless you're very flexible, but yeah, shoulder width or wider. You're going to want to have your heels closer to the rail. The rail is the edge of the board, and you're going to want to be applying pressure on the zones marked red. Your back foot is typically going to be on its side, and you're going to try to be keeping as much of your weight on your front foot as much as you can, maybe 60 to 75% of your weight. Okay, now we're going to be getting low. We're going to start on the ground and then we're going to try them on the board. I'm going to bring in the foot positioning and then sort of like balancing and all the other small things. So the first thing we're going to do is getting comfortable squatting in the box position or squatting on the board. This is the position needed for Heelside slides. So foot position is going to be the same as above, and you're basically squatting on the board, but your back knee is going to be bent over and you're going to have most of your weight on your front foot. Like I did say, 60 to 75% of your weight. Word of warning, if you have too much weight on your back foot, it's going to cause your back knee pain. Try to have as much weight on your front foot as you can. Your hand is going to go back with a little bit of weight on it. Most of your weight is typically going to be on the board still. When I'm practicing this thing stationary, I like to ball my hand into a fist as it's a bit more comfortable to put down and put weight on it. Yeah, you're going to want to have your hand slightly ahead of your front wheels or slightly ahead of your heels and a distance behind you that's comfortable. And then when you get up from this position, you want to push off your front foot into the standing position. This is a great way to maintain weight on your front foot, and it's also a great way to not put too much weight on your back foot. Again, I want to reiterate, don't put too much weight on your hand. If I had to put it into numbers, I'd say maybe 5 to 10% is okay, maybe a little bit over 15%, but not too much weight on your hand. And this is all a bit tricky and it's going to require some practice. Yeah, and remember as well, try to keep your back foot flat and keeled over a little bit. Now move on to the board and see if it feels the same. So balancing on the board is a little bit harder, obviously, and it feels a little bit more awkward, and also the distance to put your hand down is further and it feels weird. when you're actually moving, when you're actually skating, it's going to be a bit better. It's going to feel like you're a little bit more balanced for some reason. I think some of the G-forces when you're skating kind of helps with that. Now, I quickly want to talk about grabbing rail on your board. Grabbing rail is just basically when you use your free hand to grab the board, and this can be really helpful with balancing and can give you leverage over the board and can help you turn a little bit and can also help you stay on board as well. You want to grab over your back foot, not in between your legs. Grabbing in between your legs is called sting bug, and it's bad because it puts too much weight on your back foot. And what this does, it limits your control, and yeah, it's not very nice. And if you try it at high speeds, you'll actually get wobbles. It's best avoided. You want to grab over your back leg, and what this does, it naturally forces weight onto your front foot. I personally think it's better to learn heel sides without grabbing rail at all, because for a lot of people, grabbing rail is usually done for compensation because they have a lack of leverage or trouble staying on board, which likely means they have bad form and bad weight placement. And with bad form, grabbing rail forces weight onto your back knee, and this can really stress out your ACL and MCL and other ligaments, which can be damaging in the long term. However, if you can do grabbing rail with good form, weight on your front knee with your knee not hurting at all, then by all means go ahead. And finally, if you're not comfortable with the heel side stuff, if you're not comfortable at all, if you have trouble squatting, highly recommend you try a full body weight squat off the board with your heels flat, with your legs shoulder width apart. And if you can do it, then that just means there's some trial and error you're going to have to do to get the right feel on your board. However, if you can't do a body weight squat, that might mean you have poor lower body mobility, and this is going to hinder your progress with heel side stuff, but it's something you can work on if you stretch enough, if you work on your flexibility and lower body mobility. Your heel side stuff is just going to progress a bit slower, but as you bring your lower mobility and flexibility up to speed, I am someone who doesn't have very good lower body mobility and lower body flexibility, and I really had to work on my flexibility, but with incorporating a couple stretches weekly, I was able to get it up to speed and be good enough to do hillside stuff. Okay, now let's look at the toe side foot positioning. Again, you're going to want to have your feet about shoulder width apart. They can be wider. I don't recommend they be narrower unless you're extremely flexible and you're comfortable with that. You're going to want to have your toes closer to the rail. You're going to want to have pressure on the zones marked red, and you're going to want to keep your weight on your front foot as much as you can, about 60 to 75% of your weight. Now let's look at toe side stuff when you're crouching. So we're going to try it on the floor first as well. So same foot position as above. You're going to want to have your hand in front of your toes or near your toes or somewhere that's comfortable. You're not going to want to put too much weight on your hand as well. Maybe 10%, 15% might be okay. And remember to keep weight on your front foot with pressure in the specified zones, pressure on your toes, front toes, and pressure on your back toes as well. Now let's take it to the board and try it. This time it's perfectly okay to grab rail. It's harder to turn toe side without it, as it's really difficult to naturally apply weight into your toes. So yeah, grabbing rail is okay. You're typically gonna grab rail about where the middle of your front foot is, but it's not really mandatory, just kind of grab where you're comfortable with. But I find grabbing that gives me the best amount of leverage and makes it easier to turn toe side. Another thing is you can really bend into your front toes for maximum leverage and weight application on your front foot. Really sort of try bend into it and really try dig into it if you're having trouble applying weight, and yeah, it should feel the best. And that's basically toe sides. I don't find toe sides to be as complicated as heel sides. I am naturally better at toe sides, so yeah, I don't find them as complicated. And if you have anything to add to that, I highly recommend you leave something in the comments. Maybe in another video I can expound on it more, but that's basically what it is. Okay, so now that you figured out the positions, where you should apply your weight and how to sit on your board, let's take it out and apply it on the road. So what we're going to do now is called hand drag carving, and it's just basically getting into the positions and putting a hand down and just turning and carving with your hand down. Essentially just like turning with a hand on the ground, with your puck on the ground, and just getting used to that feeling. That's what we're going to do. So the idea is just to get comfortable in these positions, you know, putting a hand down and carving with it. And there's no real trick to this. It's just body positioning and really where to apply your weight. Maybe your trucks might not be like tuned properly, so they might feel a bit weird, so that's something you might have to deal with. But yeah, there's no real trick to it, just body positioning and getting used to it and just putting a hand down. When doing this, I highly recommend you have a moderate amount of speed. I think it's best done on a mellow hill, unless you can like really push in hard and get like a good amount of speed. You know, I highly recommend you practice doing like 180-degree hand drag carving turns, which is just basically holding the turn with a glove down. Sometimes when you turn hard enough, you might even find yourself sliding or breaking traction. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's gonna be a bit awkward crouching down on your board, but this is something that you get used to, and is actually something this exercise is designed to help you get used to. And yeah, that's pretty much hand drag carving. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the video, and we've really been working up to hand drag carving, getting like the foot positioning right, because if hand drag carving is something you can do confidently, then sliding is going to be really easy for you, and it's going to be something that you can do pretty easily and pretty confidently. So yeah, and as well, I want to stress, if you can't cruise, if you can't carve, and if you can't foot brake confidently, you're going to have such a hard time learning to slide, and your learning curve is really going to be increased. The time it takes for you to learn to slide is going to be increased, because as you're learning to slide, you're also going to be learning how to do these things, because cruising and curving is so fundamental to learning to slide that it's something you cannot do without. So if it's something you don't know how to do, go and learn that. Just get some contact time on your skateboard, just be out, cruise, curve, you know, be able to turn deeply 180 degrees, all that stuff, and you will soon be ready to learn to slide. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Big thanks to all my patrons, those guys are wonderful. Big thanks to the subscribers as well. If you have any comments, queries, questions, leave them in the comments. Of course, if you feel like I've missed out on anything, leave a comment as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next video.